we're out in the country in the middle of nowhere.
Oh, really?
Wouldn't it be fun to get together with our friends and buy a piece of property and subdivide it and do farming together? Or so we ended up buying like 170 acres and we divided it up into 3 acre lots. We started this, we were like 35 to 55. So the first one was more of like, hippie dreams. I mean, it was like,
Oh, yeah.
we're hanging out in a hot tub going, let's live together and farm together and do cool things. And when we built this community, Elderberry, was much more challenging because there weren't individual lots like just do your own thing. We
Yeah.
had to build these units. They're all duplexes and quadruplexes. And so it just, and this shared water and electric and wells. And so it's just much more complicated project. We don't require any hours. In fact, we don't require contribution. We just say we have an expectation that everyone
Hmm.
contributes.
Today I'm going to be interviewing Mary, who is a founder of the Elderberry Cohousing Village, which is in North Carolina. It was founded in 2014 and it aims to create a rural, supportive, and eco-friendly community where adults can make independent life choices, maintain active lifestyles, and support one another as they age. The community values close relationships, rural living, spiritual freedom, and sustainability through organic farming, food production, and eco conscious living. In our conversation, I talk a lot about their energy infrastructure, their food production, their gardening, their social life, how they organized their village to be most cohesive, and just all around what is it like to be in a intentional community and what are the challenges that arise from being in one. So, why don't we start with why did you personally join the community and when did you join the community?
So this history is a little different than most communities. So I moved with my husband, my family here in 1987. And we, like, he grew up in a family farming community. We always grew up in close neighborhoods. And so we had a lot of friends, and we kind of just went, oh, wouldn't it be fun to get together with our friends and buy a piece of property and subdivide it and do farming together? So in 1990, there were about there were like 4 or 5 couples interested in doing this, but we very soon had a few more. So we ended up buying like 170 acres, and we divided it up into 3 acre lots. There's now 14 actually lots there, and we raised our families there, and it was really great. And it was out in the country. So then when we started this, we were like 35 to 55, and then 20 years later, we're 55 to 75, and we're like, oh, our kids are gone. We don't need these big houses. We don't want to run these big farms anymore. We want to downsize, but we don't want to move away.
Mm-hmm.
So we bought adjacent land and built this co-housing community where several of us have moved to. So the choice of doing it was simply a way to have an intergenerational community and a senior community next to each other, and to be able to downsize. Like now, I'm in this nice little bitty house, and I don't have big gardens. And what you want to do, if you want to do gardening, you can do it with somebody else here.
Mm-hmm.
So it's gone from 3 acre lot, pretty isolated, but in a great community. Um, but to these are attached townhouses. So it's just a different lifetime, and different needs, but it's great because it kind of just morphed.
Sweet. Okay, so you have a lot more experience than I thought. So like your community was founded like 1990, right?
Well, the first one,
Yeah.
and then this one we bought the land adjacent to that community in 2007.
Okay.
Um, so this one, and that took about 5 years to develop or so. So we had maybe the first houses here, maybe 12 years, 10, 12 years ago. And then we developed this one over some time. So the last set of homes here was built about 5 years ago.
Okay.
So yeah, so
Got it.
two very different communities with two very different ways of governing and very different. It's very. We tried to take what we learned from the first community and put it in place in the second, and
Mm-hmm.
I can tell you more about that later. But that was we did some very novel things that we're real happy about having done.
Yeah, I would love to hear about that.
what did you feel like the beginning stages of your first one, building your first one, was like, and how was it kind of learning as you built the next two? Correct? You have three total.
No, just no, just two.
Oh, just two.
So
Okay.
we built the one community and then built the second community.
Okay, got
That's
it.
it. So the first one was more of like, hippie dreams. I mean, it was like,
Oh yeah.
we're hanging out in a hot tub going, let's live together and farm together and do cool things. And honestly, it was totally by hook and by crook. We started looking for land. We found this big piece of property. We didn't know what we were doing.
Mm,
We bought the property, like, borrowed money from each other, did whatever we could to buy this big piece of property. Took a few years to just figure out how to subdivide it, worked with the planning office, um, you know, figured out where the road was going to go, which was a year's worth of decision. Um, and then it was a little easier because once we had all of that done, we figured out generally how to subdivide the land. We agreed that. We agreed the road and where it would go and what it would be made out of, and we agreed to put underground power. Then people just bought their own lot and did their own thing. So that was pretty easy. Everybody had their own well and septic and everything. When we built this community, Elderberry, was much more challenging because there weren't individual lots like just do your own thing. We
yeah.
had to build these units. They're all duplexes and quadruplexes. And so it just, and there's shared water and electric and wells. And so it's just much more complicated project.
Yeah.
Very challenging project. Yeah.
I imagine that took a lot of time to get that fully, flushed out. How long was that process for the one that you're at right now to get everything kind of up and going?
I'd say 5 to 7 years before I felt like we were pretty much done.
Yeah.
I think I'm trying to remember 20, it was probably about 6 years before we turned over. We had an LLC
Mm-hmm.
until we turned over from the LLC to the Property Owners Association. It took a long time, and there were three of us that were mostly the full-time people on this, and it was a full-time job. I mean,
Yeah.
I remember going to early in the early days. We went to one of those weekend workshops by Chuck Durrett, the guy who. And one of the things he said was, if you're self-developing, both of these for us were self-developed, you need a project manager. You at least need a project manager. And he said that person is going to be working full-time on your project, and they're the kind of person that when they wake up in the morning, the first thought in their head is, what do I need to do for that project today? And honestly, that was me and Vonda. We did not hire anybody, but the two of us were flat out, this was our life for probably at least 5 years. So you got to be ready for that. And we weren't really ready for that. Having developed the last community that was comparatively easy, we were ready for fun and we liked doing it and we worked hard and we had a good time, but we were not ready for the time commitment that it took.
Yeah, that is something that I've thought about. And I've heard someone else that I've talked to kind of gave me the analogy of like, there's a lot of people trying to build like cruise ships out there, and you could go and join a cruise ship. Everyone wants to be on one. You can just go and join one. You don't have to go and build everything your own because it takes a lot of work and time and resources. So yeah, that's something I've been hearing from a lot of people is like you should go join a community first before trying to build your own. And it sounds.
I mean, I also loved building this.
Yeah.
And like I was saying, you can create what you want if you are the visionaries. And some of the things that we created, you won't find in another community. So, I mean, I think it just depends on what you want,
Yeah, I definitely feel like for me personally, building it is a lot of fun in theory. I know it's a ton of work. That's going to take years. But, I've been doing little bits here and there on my own property that I've had. And I feel like I'm ready to, branch out and try and do a lot more.
Yeah. And I would say the biggest challenge isn't like all the logistics, which, contractors and you can imagine what it takes to do all this with every agency in the world and your county laws and your city planners and you're what all that. But the hardest part is actually the people,
Mm.
getting the right people, even if they're your friends. How do you make decisions together? There's going to be conflict. You know, that challenge is the harder challenge, honestly.
Got it. Yeah, I've heard that as well. And kind of going with that, I've been hearing, I've been talking to a lot of communities, by the way. So I'm trying to get a lot of different perspectives from all types of communities. Um, what would you say has been like the biggest challenge with the people? Like, you have what, like 18 people on your
Households.
18
We have
households?
18 households, so about 25 people.
Okay. And what would you say has been like the biggest challenge, like general challenge or recurring one?
I don't think we have a recurring one. I think at first, so I think our community has done extremely well. And I think at first the challenge, especially with my last community, just a minute, I'm just going to switch where I can be more comfortable,
Yeah, you're good.
um, was that those were, most of these intentional communities make decisions by consensus.
Mm-hmm.
And, I think that's a really great way to make decisions. It's hard sometimes and slow sometimes, but you get everybody on board if you're good at it. I would say in my last community, we were babies. We didn't really know anything about consensus. I wouldn't say we did it particularly well. We had our ups and downs. It was difficult. But, it was a committed group of people, and we got through and we're really good friends and still are. So this community was different in that we didn't know the people when we moved in. We knew some of them because they moved next door. But most of these people who are here came from all over the country
Mm.
to be here. Um, so you have to get to know the people so you don't have this underlying relationship already. So it's important to create a lot of social time and the ability to do that. But I personally think it takes a lot of committed effort in learning a good and developing a good consensus process, making sure everybody understands it. I'm a huge believer in teaching people and making a commitment to cooperative culture, which you might not even have heard before, versus competitive culture, which is the way our Western world works. And so to me, the challenge is finding people who have those levels of commitment and are willing to learn and are willing to look at themselves and are willing to have some self growth along
Mm.
the way. And it was easier in our first community because we knew each other going in and we were all kind of committed. So when you're bringing in people all over the place, it's a lot to ask of people. Learn this consensus process, and then as part of it, you don't always get what you want. And it's like, I don't know. It's a I'd say in general, that's the biggest challenge is having people change their mindset about how they're used to living
Yeah.
from unless your community isn't going to do this, from being like independent Westerners to being, interdependent friends. And some people can do that and some people can't.
Mm.
And we do find that, generally people who can't will leave, and that's okay. But it's hard on community when people come and go. And some people stay who really aren't well suited to that kind of lifestyle.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I will say that in this community, I think we have a great consensus process. We have a team of facilitators who spent years studying facilitation in consensus communities. We do a really good job of it. And so we have very little conflict in our meetings. But we occasionally have conflict in the community. Somebody's dog's barking and they won't shut it up or whatever it
Yeah.
is. So you have to be willing and have money in your budget to train people on, conflict and how to manage conflict. And you need to, you know, just decide what your values are around relationship. Put your money where your mouth is.
Got it. So, what would you say is your community's like mission and vision, and would you say that that was like developed from the very start and kind of stayed, or did it kind of evolve as you went through time?
Um, I'd say we developed it at the start. If you look on our website, you can see it,
Mm-hmm.
vision, mission, values kind of thing. And I would say that most people here feel like it's still pretty true. We have not gone back and redone our vision, and we feel like we need to, like it's time to,
Uh,
because there's some things that we would add in, like the cooperative culture would be maybe more front and center. And then there's things that we may take out because some of the people who were really big in the beginning, like there's one called A Handmade Life, where we just say that we pretty much make and grow what we need, but we kind of don't do that 10 years on very much. So I think there's a few things that have changed, but I'd say in general, our vision is still pretty true to what you would read if you just look online. But this community was designed specifically to help care for one another as we age. And we don't provide any medical care. We provide what we call good neighborly care, but that is the heart of what we do. We want to grow old in a community where we can stay as long as we can, without maybe forever, without going to some assisted living place, because we have people care enough about us to help a little bit. We've kind of learned that most people need a little help for quite a long time, and then just a lot of help for a short time. And most of us are willing to say, forget that lot of help for a short time. Just give me the little help I need for the long time to stay here. My mother-in-law's here. She's 90 and she's doing great. She couldn't live here. She could not live alone if she were not in this community. And we had a person who was 102 here. So it just depends on the help, but we're really, really good at that. And then we're also really, really good at the social piece. I mean, we have a party for every single thing, and we just have a lot of time together. We go out and say goodnight to each other every night. We just, there's a lot of social bonding here. And so those two things, those two parts of our vision, I think are wildly successful. We just really do well with creating a really rich social life here, and caring for one another.
Dang, I love that. I just watched this like 3-episode thing on Netflix. I can't remember the exact name, but it's about like the blue zones.
Oh yeah,
You've heard of it?
we've read that.
Yeah.
Yeah, we've seen that too. Yeah.
Yeah, it's great, and I feel like it talked exactly about what you talked just now about, which is like almost none of the blue zones have like any assisted living, like they're all kind of going into old age in community and with family. And I really do like that that philosophy of trying to just do a little bit of the necessary things over time, as opposed to like give me every single thing I need. But yeah, I really envy that. That's a good way to do it, in my opinion. Let's see. And if you ever have any questions for me, I realized the more I'm doing this that it's hard to find the right questions not having done it before. And honestly, I feel like all the people that I talk to, they ask me questions that I didn't even think of. So yeah, at any time you're free to ask something like, oh, did you think about this? Or
Well, I'm happy at some point to give you our lessons learned. So
oh
that's
yeah,
kind of the same thing.
let's jump into
What did
that.
Okay. So let me tell you first about what we call our legacy agreements. These are, like I said, very different than other communities. So when we were, the three of us who kind of did this community, when we were at the other community, we realized there were three things that we thought did not work that well. One was that we didn't have any way to sort of screen people that were coming in. There's no legal way to do that. Like if a house came for sale, and it didn't for like 15 years, but if a house came for sale, anybody could buy it off the street, and that may not be a person who's a good fit in our community.
Yeah.
And there was no way to deal with that. The second problem was we didn't have any money other than assessments. We put all our money in to make the community, build the infrastructure. There was not extra money there. And the only way if we wanted to make improvements to get money was special assessments, and that's a bad way to get money because people don't have it, and there's always going to be somebody who's like, I don't have the money to buy a tractor, or I don't have the money, whatever. So, and then the third was house prices just started to go up like crazy, and we wanted our communities to be affordable, and especially in the last several years, the house prices over there, everything has just gone crazy, and we wanted to find a way to keep houses affordable, at least So what we did, we created 3 legacy agreements at Elderberry that addressed those 3 issues. So the first one is that there's a membership process here. So if you want to join, you got to come to a business meeting, come to Workday, come to a social event, talk to people. There's a whole process. And we don't tell you you can't buy a house here, but if we have concerns, we let you know we have concerns. In the meantime, you learn a lot about what it's like to live here, the good, the bad. Like, it's a wonderful place, and it can be challenging, to do things by consensus. And so we just make sure that people come in eyes open. If we see something we don't like, we talk to them about it. If they see something they don't like, they probably don't join, and that's good, because, we just want to have some control over that. So you can't make an offer on a house here until you've been through our consensus, or our membership process. This is all drawn up legally. So the second is that we set the price on your house. So if you bought a house for $200,000 and you're going to sell it, you have it appraised, and your house price will be something between where you bought it and what it was appraised for. Cannot be sold over appraised value. And usually people will be willing to sell it under appraised value, because the third agreement is 75% of appreciation on houses goes back to the community. So
Wow.
that's considered your legacy to our community. And so we have collected, about 200,000 over the last 5 years from that. And we have put in whole lots of solar to, like tons of solar. We've built things, we've bought, bought a golf, and we've done all these things that we could never have done because we did not have income. But this gives us income, and it isn't income that anyone in this community has put money into. It's the people who've left, who've said, this is, and they're not. So the first thing we tell people when they're interested in our community is this is not a good financial investment. You will not. We do. You will not make money on your house.
Yeah.
You may make a little. You'll make what you put into it, or you bought it for, but that's part of what we have as a legacy agreement. If you don't like that, don't buy here, because you will, give most of your appreciation back to the community when you sell, if you sell. We want people to live here for their lifetime. So yeah, so those are the 3 legacy agreements that have worked out really, really well, I would say, really well. And then other lessons learned, let's see. We have had county planners change in the middle of processes. So that's been a challenge, and we've kind of learned the importance of developing relationships with those people and getting agreements early on, even if you can't implement yet, so that things, if the planner changes, they don't start requiring different things of you. They hold you to what was agreed when you put in your site plan, et cetera. Also, getting to know all of your neighbors. Like, we knew all of our neighbors because we lived here before, but even people 2 and 3 miles down the road who we didn't know at all, because you have to do, there has to be zoning. They didn't understand what we were putting here. They came and opposed at a public meeting. So we just started to invite everybody in who lived within a mile's radius to say, here's what we're doing. Let's get to know you. We're good neighbors. We've lived here for all this time. And same thing with the county, with the planners. My first thing that I did when I wanted to do this was just went and sat down and had a talk with our county planner and said, I just want to get to know you and let you know what we're thinking about and get your views and your help. And she said, wow, I just put my mom in a group home and we really need this in our county.
Wow.
And they already had an ordinance on the books for, what we have is these, a lot of counties don't, where you have cluster houses. So your houses are clustered, but then we have 10 acres. So a third of that property has to be in conservation easement. But if you don't already have ordinances in your county that allow what you want to do, you should start working way, way ahead of it, because that can take years for new ordinances to be approved.
Wow.
So getting, and then we got to know really well the guy who does our, the head of environmental health, nice guy. Again, we just go to them and say, here's what we want. We need your advice. What's your advice? Help us with this. And you'd be amazed at how helpful they are, instead of just throwing something at them for approval when you're ready to do that. And so he ended up designing our septic system. He didn't even charge us for that.
Wow.
So, I mean, relationships are everything. They're everything in your community, and they're everything outside of your community. Your neighbors, the people who are going to be doing this for you, start developing relationships with people so that when you start to work through these things, everything's well greased because people know you and they want you to succeed. So that was a big one. Fight for what you want. We've had several things where we were just told no, and then we just went to higher powers. Like our electric company said, no, you can't have shared power. And we drove to the Capitol and went to see the state board and made an argument for why it made complete sense to have shared power in this community, and they approved it.
Dang.
You know, over the objections of Piedmont Electric. You know, so you just, if there's things that you really feel strongly you want to do, just don't take no for an answer from, especially for profit, you know, whatever.
Right. Yeah, arbitrary rules.
Yeah. Also, keep really good records. It's easier now. When we started our community, it was not that easy, especially with potluck, to keep good records. Everything was paper. But I cannot tell you how many times I've gone back 5 and 8 years to read minutes or to look up some agreement we made. You know, so we keep track of every consensus decision we've made to date. We have a file called Consensus Decisions to Date. It goes back to the very first one ever made. Very, very valuable because sometimes people come in and they have to kind of buy into that and they don't even know what they're buying into. It's like, it's a good thing for new people to read through, but it's also really important when you're like, oh, I don't remember how we did this, or to be able to find it. So I'm a big proponent of really having a really, really good record keeping online. That's all I can think of right now.
Man, you just kept going. that was great. Yeah, that's a lot of good lessons. And definitely I haven't thought of most of those. So that's really cool to hear. There was one in there
And
that
when you're self-developing, be sure to add at least 15% to whatever budget you believe you need. The highest budget you think you need, add 15% to that. You're going to need it because stuff's going to come up you never imagined.
Yeah, that makes sense. I've been hearing that, like, you know, any type of major development just never goes to budget.
Right.
What oh man, okay, I got a lot of questions. What time do you need to end by the way?
I'm good. I'm fine.
Okay.
I'm going over with my sons for dinner at probably 5 or so, 5:30.
Okay, yeah, I won't take that long. I'll probably,
Yeah, we've got plenty of time.
yeah, sweet. Let's see here. So going with the like legal stuff, did you ever think about doing getting land in like unrestricted land, or was it always like you need to be close to, you know, major city?
Well, this was, I don't know if I would call it unrestricted land. We're out in the country in the middle of nowhere.
Oh, really?
Yeah, we're not in a city. We're in a township. We're in a rural township.
Okay.
So we did have it easy. It's much easier to build out in the middle of nowhere because the restrictions are so much looser
Yeah.
than if you're building in a city, in an incorporated part of the city. So we like that, but that was only accidental on our part because we started our farms out here, and when it came time to build this community, we wanted to be next door. So just had to talk a neighbor into selling us land. But we did look at doing things like, to keep the house prices down, we did look at doing, you know, like what do you call it? Kind of like, sort of like where the community owns the land.
Yeah.
And you just buy into the building or whatever. We looked at all kinds of crazy things to try to keep house prices down, co-ops, all of that. In the end, we opted for, you own your house in the space that it's in, the lot that it's on. But those are 0 lot line houses. So it's like townhouses.
Yeah.
It's basically townhouses. We did not go with condos. At the time, everybody was going with condos with co-housing. And the problem at that time was, that was when, like 2007, there was the big crash, kind of.
Yeah.
And developers were half building things and walking away, and you couldn't get funding for townhouses. You couldn't get people to get a loan on their house to buy it if it was a condo. I mean, so we went with townhouses, and we're really glad we did. So we have a lot of the same features
Mm.
as condos, but we're not legally condos. So for instance, our assessments pay for some of the exterior maintenance on our homes, like a condo would. But the only reason we do that is that this is a senior community and we wanted it to always look nice. And a lot of times older people don't have the money or the ability or whatever to keep the outside of their house looking nice. And we wanted um, to not have, over time houses peeling paint. And so even though we own our own houses, we pay some every month toward an account that does just like painting of trim and siding, gutter cleaning, washing houses. That's pretty much it. Termite checks.
Nice.
So
And
that makes me-
your your community, you said, doesn't pay like an HOA or anything like that monthly.
yeah, we do. We have it's like we call it a POA, whatever, property owners, homeowners. But yes, we have an assessment that is $224 a month right now. It's only gone up a couple times. I think it started at 170 like 10 years ago.
Mm.
And it pays, in addition to, like I said, there is some money in there for exterior maintenance, but otherwise it pays for our common house, our taxes, insurance, you name it, like the infrastructure. We have wells and septic. We have a paved parking area, mailbox structure. I mean, so but we don't take in, the nice thing about this community is if you look at our budget, we only take in exactly pretty much what it costs us every year to run.
Wow.
We don't need to take in extra money because we have that development fund from our legacy
Right.
agreements. So that's for the extra things we want. So our assessments are kept low from that because we don't have to bring in extra money to save for something or to have an emergency fund available. So we already have that.
Nice. And this is something that I feel like is kind of at a heart of, I don't know, potential issues arising from this thing. Like having set in stone, like, I don't know about obligations is the right word, but like things to make sure that, people are contributing in some way, or making sure that things get done, especially for like farming, since that's a big one for me and my group. Is that something that's in your like covenants or bylaws or anything like that, or is it?
So,
Yeah, go
mhm.
ahead.
I mean, that's something that every single community struggles with.
Yeah.
And we have a philosophy here that has worked well for us, but may not work for you. So we know that all kinds of communities have required hours. Some people you pay if you don't work those hours, or you pay in lieu of those hours, or there's like so many different ways to do this. Um, we we tell people when they come in, we expect that people contribute to this community, um, and we understand that people contribute to their own abilities, and we want people to contribute by doing things they love to do. We don't require any hours. In fact, we don't require contribution. We just say we have an expectation that everyone
Mm.
contributes. And people do different things. There'll be things that, somebody who's physically not very able, because we're an older community, but they might, be the people who manage some financial thing for us and keep track of the electricity for us, or so people may not even be doing physical labor as their contribution. They may be doing mental labor. My 90-year-old mother-in-law, I can tell you, doesn't do either physical or mental labor, but
Yeah.
she has made these unbelievably beautiful quilts for our
Hmm.
common house, and she keeps giving money every month or two to the kitchen committee, because she just feels like she wants to give. But so our philosophy is people will give their best if they're having fun and they are doing something they like to do, especially with others. And that if you force people to do something, they're going to do it resentfully. They're not going to, it's not coming from their heart. And so we're not forcing anybody to do anything. So we have this kind of cool system though. So I don't know, when we created our common house, one of the things we said was we wanted it to be, somebody said they wanted it to be like a beehive of activity.
Mm.
Because we had gone to so many common houses where there was nobody in that common house, nobody there.
Yeah.
And our common house is, and we can talk about physical design of your community, which makes a big difference. But our common house is a very busy place. So we have this theme. We call the common house the hive. So it's the hive. And then everything has taken on bee stuff. So our work group is called the swarm. And the way that we do it is we have, and anybody can add to this list, we have a list of like, I don't know, 200 things that need to be done around our community regularly. Some of them is like, weeding, or the gardening and farming kind of thing is different. And I could talk about that. Those are what we call special interest groups. So not everybody does it. So those who participate, they make their own rules around it and they have their own costs, and they do have work requirements.
Hmm.
If you want to be part of our common gardeners, you got to work in the garden, and they work that out with you. But in the community itself, we have weeding, we have, projects, we have cleaning the common house, we built our own paths, we've done a lot of our own construction, we're renovating old buildings. So there's long lists of things that need to be done. Like maybe quarterly, I think somebody cleans out the vents for the dryers, and there's all these things. They're all on index cards, and they're all put in the months of the year where they need to be done. So on a swarm day, we usually have two a month, one or two a month, which is a work day. And almost everybody comes to the work days because they're fun. We often make pizza or we make them fun. But you come to the work day, and we usually round up to start and say, okay, what are the big jobs today? Okay, we're about out of firewood for the wood stove and the common house, so we need some people chopping wood, so we're going to do that today. And so here's the two or three bigger projects if people want to work on those. But other than that, there's a stack of cards for that month of
Hmm.
things that have to be done that month, whether outside, inside. Maybe they're done every month, maybe they're done once a year, but they're due that month. So like January's cards are out, and you go over, you either do it at a work day or you go over and you just take cards. They're laminated cards, and you say, okay, sometime this month I'm gonna clean the oven. And you take the clean the oven card, whatever it is. And then when you've done it, you put it in the completed file. And so people can do it whenever they want, however they want. They can do as many or as few as they want. They can not take any cards. I rarely take cards because I actually just like to work on whatever project we're working on, and that isn't a card. Like right now, we're renovating a log barn. So, but that's kind of how it works. So we know, so things don't not get done. We do have an agreement that if there are things that don't get done, we will hire them done, and they will
Hmm.
cost us all more in assessments. But we don't force anybody to do them or to work any certain number of hours. But we are very flexible. We make it easy for people to work with us or on their own time. We make it really clear what needs to be done, um, and people volunteer and do it. And for the most part, the only thing that we've ended up hiring done that people don't want to do or they weren't getting done was some of the mowing, right? Probably two-thirds of the mowing we couldn't keep up on, so we still do some. And like cleaning the gutters, which actually for a long time we hired, but now we have somebody in the community who's cleaning gutters who's happy to do it. So like, yeah, if we go a couple months and we're like, hey, these cards didn't get done and they're consistently not getting done, I guess this is a job we have to hire out.
Hmm.
And that's just the way it is. So it's very much based on an expectation that people will contribute. And there are one or two people who kind of don't very
Mm-hmm.
much. They really don't. But you have to kind of, like, in my view, again, looking at cooperative culture about fairness, mine, yours, how much, 50-50 splits, you just go, that person can't do it or won't do it. And forcing them isn't going to make it any different, you
Yeah.
know? So we just don't do that. And 95%, I mean, out of a community of 25, there's like two men actually. One's who is not as capable, and one who's younger and is just not a good fit for our community.
Hmm.
And they're perfectly nice people, but I would say they're the only two that really don't give who could give. Um, but everybody else, even my mother-in-law, is contributes. So
Dang. Yeah, the quilts. That is awesome. I haven't heard of a system like that before, so that's really cool. It does sound like it's very you know organic and team oriented and whatever you want to do kind of style. That does seem like that would be a lot more fruitful than like assigning, like you're gonna do this and you're gonna have to do that type of thing.
well,
Um,
people like to work together too. They
yeah,
do. I mean, people who want to be in community like to work together, and if they don't like to, maybe they shouldn't be in community.
right.
But people have so much more fun when we're out there and we've got, okay, we're going to weed the whole South Quad today. And everybody's out there on the ground talking to each other, weeding, you know?
Yeah,
But yeah, so.
that's sweet. So you brought this up. This is an awesome question. What would you say is the important thing about your kind of layout that contributes to like that beehive effect for the common area?
So, this community, while it has 18 homes, they're very tight. So, like I said, they're quads and duplexes, and they're built in a circle with the common house in the middle. So, if you step out, like if I show you, nobody is further than to the common house than me,
Mm-hmm.
probably. So there's snow on the ground today. It's amusing. Hang on a minute. Let me. Shoot. I was trying to turn my camera around.
Okay.
Snow, 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 snow. So this is my backyard. That's our common house. That's the hive. It's a big round building
Mm-hmm.
right in the center of the community. You can see houses over there, houses over there. So all the houses go all the way around it, and they all can walk to the hive in 1 minute. And they all have to kind of go through the hive in order to, like it's the quickest way across the community.
Yeah.
Um, and there's several doors and paths around it. And we also have shared laundry facilities. So the laundry facilities are not in the hive, but they're attached to it. So you have to go to the hive for that. Um, and the parking is remote. So the parking is the other direction. So people have to walk past the hive on the paths to get to their homes from the parking lot. So there's a lot of crisscrossing of people in the community. Um, and then there's, like I said, we are really good also on social events. So
Mm-hmm.
part of it is how close we put, like there are so many communities, and this is a big Chuck Durrett design. It drives me crazy. So many communities that are built because people want to park right at their house. And we decided, you know what, especially for older people, it's really good to not park, to have to walk from your car.
Mm.
There is a pedway. So like my 90-year-old mother, I swing around on the pedway right outside her house and pick her up. But her car isn't parked there. I just pick her up there and then I go out.
Mm.
So the parking lot is like, for some people it's reasonably close, but otherwise people have to kind of walk to it. Forgot what I was going to say. There was something else about that. Oh, the Duret's designs, a lot of them are these, they want pedestrian space in the middle, so they have like a pedestrian walkway, but it's like a long street. There's houses up and down, both sides, and so people can park behind their houses, but the center is like a big parkway. And then the common house is somewhere, but I guarantee you for anybody, like there's about 8 co-housing communities in this area. So, and most of them, the common house is near the end of their drive.
Mm.
So it's a long way. So you have to drive to the common house, a lot of people. So I'm not going to run to the common house and pick up a book. I mean, I might run over to the common house once or twice a day to look in my cubby for something, or to leave something for somebody, or to grab something out of the freezer because we have community freezers. But, if I had to get in my car and drive to it,
Mm.
or if I had to walk, all the way down to the end of the block, and then you don't see people coming and going from it. So, and also, even though you might have pedestrian space in front of your house, when you look out your front door, when you look out your back door, you see your car. When you look out your front door, you see another house across the way. Here, if you look out your back door, you see woods. If you look out your front door, you see the common house.
Hmm.
So we really like this design.
Dang. Yeah, I like that idea. It does make sense to kind of have both ends. Like you have the privacy of the backspace and very community in an organic way, and in a way that it doesn't seem forced, but that it's it's intentional. Uh, what what's your setup for the gardens? Is it just a communal space for the gardens, or
So
is it for everybody like their own place?
yeah, so everybody has enough space. Not everybody has a lot of good light, but if they wanted to garden just outside their own home, small garden, they can certainly do it. Some people have more space than others. So there's several, in fact, I do greens at least. So there's several people that have their own little gardens by their house. That's fine. There's a space that we have designated for raised bed gardens that has great light, and it's just out, it's in a big open area. And people can use that space, even though it isn't their personal space. They can put raised beds in that area. So we have just this big area for raised beds, but again, they're personal. Anybody who wants one, or sometimes people work together. So we provide space for that. And then we have community gardens. So we used to have three. We have one huge one now. And so people who want to garden together, I think there's about 10, because we also include potluck farm. Like, we do things with our neighbor community. I'm not in the community garden, but what they do is basically they meet, they decide together what they're planting, they put their money into the garden. They just do it all together. They all help and contribute in whatever way. I don't think they're real strict about it, but I think they do sort of have how many hours people should aim at putting into the garden. When they intentionally grow extra food, they almost always share with the community. They also share with our local food pantry, where a lot of us volunteer. So yeah, so you can do it. You can do your own in your house. You can do it your own in a big raised bed area with other people having their own raised beds, or you can be a part of a community garden.
Got it. And are there? I know there's no like assigned jobs, but is there like any businesses or any people selling things or doing anything like that as a community like driven business type thing, or is that not in the cards?
Nope. Nope. And probably part of that is because we're a senior community. Most people here are retired.
Yeah.
Almost everybody's retired. Next door at Potluck Farm, there's some individual businesses, but there's never been a community business. So yeah, no, we haven't done that.
Okay. Um, let's see.
I will say one other thing about getting work done.
Mm-hmm.
So, like every community, I mean, we have committees. A lot of the work is done by committees, not on work days, like not on those cards.
Okay.
The cards cover things that committees don't do. So, for instance, I'm on the exterior maintenance committee. So what I do is, with the other people on that committee, once every 6 months, we do an inspection of all the homes to see if anything needs painting, washing on the house. And if so, we call in a contractor and we have that done. So, I mean, that's just the job of the committee, so nobody does it. Or the kitchen committee. Kitchen committee makes sure that we have all the supplies we need in the kitchen. They kind of make the list of what needs to be cleaned in the kitchen for the work days. Like infrastructure committee, they have the biggest job. So, like, if there's a problem with a well or a parking area or a septic system or anything, they get called. And they're responsible, because they've volunteered to be on the committee, they're responsible for getting it fixed. So people volunteer for sort of major responsibilities by volunteering for committee work. And that's why I was saying some people maybe can't do physical work, but they can do committee work. And maybe their job on the committee is not to fix a broken pipe, but to keep the committee minutes, or schedule the committee meetings. Like our facilitators is a committee. And we have one person who's on the facilitating committee who does not want to facilitate, but she runs all our meetings. She keeps all our minutes. She sends out the agenda every month for our meetings. She keeps track of our learnings. Like, she does the administrative work of the community, of the committee. So that's another way work gets done, but it's still volunteer.
Yeah. Yeah, that's great. So I want to go back a little bit, and you've been answering so many of my questions, like with like each answer. So I'm really thankful. You're really hitting a lot of these that I'm trying to figure out. So for the solar and off-grid stuff, on your website I think it says, or on the ic.org it says like 25% solar with like plans to do more. Is that quantifiable?
Yeah, so when we first put our solar in, wasn't 25%, it was about 20%, I think. At some point we had thought we had 30%. We do plan to do more. That's in the works right now. We are pretty unhappy with our solar panels because they are not producing as much, like 5 years later, as they were. So we're looking at, I don't think we'll replace them, but we're definitely adding to them. But So I would say we're more like 15% now.
Oh wow.
Um,
Yeah.
and so that was disappointing to us because we put a lot of money into those panels, but we're still going to put more in. So we're right now looking at adding solar, yeah.
Yeah.
And that'll come out of that development fund.
Okay. Yeah. And so you said that since everyone's retired, I meant to ask this earlier. For the development fund that you guys have, is that kind of like the only source of funding that you guys rely on for like the funds that when people leave, that goes into that bucket?
That's the bucket of things for community improvements.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay. Okay.
Is not to run the community. That is all assessment. So if we didn't have the development fund, we'd still be fine as a community. But
Hmm.
if we wanted to buy solar, we'd have to do a special assessment. That money would have to come from somewhere.
Okay.
So we have a pot of money that most communities don't have. And it's because every time we sell a house, money goes into that pot
Yeah.
from the seller. So, yeah, and so that's been nice. Like right now, as we speak, we are in the middle of, we're going to do an all-day retreat to prioritize so a whole bunch of projects that people have that we'd like to do. And so, of course, if you spend, we have a big project with having to do some paving, which we didn't do paving on very much paving. We used a gravel product, but we probably need to do paving in some areas. So it's going to be maybe expensive. And we're like, okay, well, if we do this project, we may not have money for that project or solar, or we're going to add in some water catchment systems. So we right now have a list. We brainstormed at our last meeting, a list of our wish list.
Mm-hmm.
And then we put that list up in our hive and added extra lines for people to put the other things. And right now there are 36 things on that list that people want. Everything from like pizza oven, outdoor kitchen to more money for training to the big things like solar and water catchment and to God, I don't know what all's on there. A patio, redoing a I don't know. I can't believe I can't name them because there's like 36 of them. And some of them are goofy, eco dome over the community. I mean, we start off by just being ridiculous,
Yeah.
but there's probably legitimate. Oh yeah, new hive, new furniture for the hive
Hmm.
because the furniture was all just hand me downs, and so we have that, and we've got a 1 day retreat coming up, a full day retreat to kind of prioritize those and say which ones are most important, which ones can we spend money on now, or which ones are really cheap and we can go ahead and do them. There's a couple like that. So we're just going to have a meeting to decide how to spend that money. But that money is all, you know, there for improvements, and it's all kind of gravy. It isn't money that anybody's contributed here. It's money because of that legacy agreement that exists in our community, and it's nice.
Hmm.
We got
Cool.
that idea from Elder Spirit. They're the only other community I know of in the country that does this. And we did what you are doing 10 years ago, and we just started visiting other communities and asking them what they did. Everybody told us not to self-develop. We did it anyway. So
Yeah.
I'm telling you, it's hard, and they were right. But Elder Spirit is in Abington, Virginia, and it was built by a bunch of ex-nuns. It's really cool
Wow.
people, and we learned a lot from them. Like we were thinking about having some rental units, and they told us the problems they had with that. And anyway, we learned a lot from them, and they're the ones that said when they sell a house, they're keeping 50% of the appreciation. And we were like, wow. And to them, they finished their project like $1 million in debt. It was huge because of all
Wow.
kinds of problems with the delay. They're in the mountains, and I don't know. Anyway, so
Yeah.
and that was the only thing that saved them was like that they had that fund. So we just bumped it right up to 75 when we did it, and said, "You don't make money on your house here."
That's awesome.
It
Honestly,
does not deter people.
yeah.
So
What's so funny is that like one of the people in my group of six that we're starting with actually brought that up as an idea um, of I think the initial idea was like no appreciation. You're gonna sell it for what you bought it for, um, and I don't know what it looks like for us, like way down the line for how many people we're gonna have and all that kind of stuff. But I think I'm pretty on board with that idea of like it should be like set into with the intention of this is going to be like a lifelong, you know, mission that we're all kind of working towards. And if obviously something crazy arises, stuff happens. But yeah, that's at least the goal. So that's cool. That
Yeah. Well, you will have turnover, even though you think you won't. And,
yeah.
we've had more turnover than I expected for all kinds of reasons. We're like out in the middle of the boonies, and everybody goes, "Oh, I love to live in the country." And then they come out here and they're 65 and they don't like to drive at night. And they're like, "I've been too far away from things." Or
Mm.
it's people just figure out, one person became a Buddhist nun, and she and I own an electric car together, and she's going off to Oregon to start a Buddhist nun community. And, my next door neighbor, who I love dearly, is leaving soon because his girlfriend, who lives in town, they've always lived separately, is now legally blind, and he needs to move in with her. So, there's lots of reasons, good
Yeah.
reasons, that people leave a community, and it'll happen. But people who care about the community are happy to leave that 75% with the community.
Right.
And yeah, it's kind of, it's just, I think it's worked out really well. So, and, because of that, people are very willing to ask for less because they're not keeping it anyway, So it's like, well, yeah, I could ask $5,000 less than appraised value, because of that 5,000, I'd only be getting like 1,000 of it anyway,
Yeah.
So
Right.
yeah.
Well, man, you've answered so many of my questions. I don't have much more. I think I've got like two left. So this one's a little more personal, and you don't have to answer it if you don't want to. But do you feel like living in an intentional community has brought you closer to something bigger, whether that be spiritual or interdependence, anything along those lines?
I think living in an intentional community can be difficult, and because of that, I think there's a lot of personal growth that happens if you are willing. And so yeah, I know that I've had a lot of personal growth. I've had to look at, I don't know if you know, when I talk about cooperative culture and competitive culture, what I'm talking about. You might pick up a book called The Cooperative Culture Handbook.
Mm.
And it's by Jana Ludwig and Karen did what's her last name? Gimnig, I can't remember. Anyway, and it is super, super good. And, it just, it, I came into community, especially the last community, from a competitive culture mindset, because we all grew up in this, like, you know, um, there's win and lose,
Mm.
there's mine and yours, there's like just the way that we, the way that the Americans tend to live.
Yeah.
And so I think me learning, like when we have a business meeting, it isn't about the outcome as much as it is about the relationships. It isn't about the decision we make as much as it is about how we make it. It isn't about being efficient. It's about like making the right decision. It isn't about like who's going to decide. It's about hearing everyone's views.
Mm.
And for someone who's worked in a place where it's like, I worked in business. You go in, you don't take 3 hours to make a decision. You listen to everybody. Somebody makes a decision. We move on. Oh my God, I couldn't believe how long it took us to build the common house. But I learned that our common house is so much better
Mm.
for having taken the time, gotten everybody's views, gotten all the great ideas, had everybody on board, had everybody helping to build it. We built our own common house. We
Dang.
built it. And it's awesome. And so I really had to learn to let go of a lot of my, having been a leader in an organization, a lot of my sort of dominating. It's really, um, it's like in business where you need an entrepreneur to start the business, but when it comes to having a CEO, you kind of want someone different.
Yeah.
And that's a big learning for somebody who's a founder in a community, because your set of skills is not what the community needs when they're just running. It's a different set of skills.
Yeah.
And you have to make that transition. You have to be willing to make that transition. You're not calling the shots. It's no longer your vision. It's the vision of whoever's there.
Right.
And so, yeah, that's a challenge. So I think I love the social piece. Um, I I also am fortunate that, because my kids grew up here. Two of my three kids are still walking distance from me here. One of them lives at the old community. One of them lives adjacent to Elderberry. So for me, I'd say the benefits way, way, way. outweigh the disadvantages. Like I tell people, elderberry is like 90 or 95% fantastic and 10% like a pain in the ass. But do you know what? Their life is too. I don't care where you live. You're not going to have nirvana. You're not going to have 100% great. You're not going to not have conflict. Um, Now, oddly, I'm actually leaving the community, at least temporarily. It's a very long story, but my mother-in-law lives in my house. I'm renting a different house so I could be here. But she lives in my house, and until she dies, I can't live in my house. So I'm moving down just a short ways down the road to a different rental house.
Hmm.
I'll still be involved. And then when she's gone in some way, I'll probably move back to my house. But so that's kind of a weird transition for me, and it'll be interesting to see what it's like to be not right next to the common house and not right in the community.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, so I've gotten a lot out of it. Um, yeah, I think it's great. But like I say, it takes a certain kind of person and a certain kind of mindset, and that's why we sort of grill people. We do grill people when they come in. Like, tell us about a time then you really had a big conflict with somebody. How did you handle it? If the way they handled it is not what we would think the way they should handle it here, be like, yeah, I just got mad at him. I don't speak to him anymore. We're like, well, that probably wouldn't work here. So maybe this isn't the place for you. And we're just straight with people. But I think that cooperative culture handbook is really, really good.
Yeah.
And the lady who wrote it, the two ladies who wrote it, the one, she lived in a income sharing community, and so that's hard. I mean, so she's got community experience, and yeah, very very cool book.
Yeah, I'll check that out. I've got a note of
And
it. Um,
we wanted all of our community, every person to read that book when it came out. I don't know, it's been a few years. So what we did was we called the authors and asked for permission to send. They do it in keys, and there's like 52 keys, so it's like a year if you sent one out a week. But we did it over 2 years. We asked them if we could send a key out to all of our community members, every couple weeks, and they allowed us to do that if we bought 2 or 3 copies of the book, and we made a donation to the Intentional Communities website, and then they gave us permission to do that. So every person in our community has actually read that book. They just read it like a chapter at a time.
mm,
So
that's sweet. Yeah, that's cool because it also kind of aligns the community in a way that, they're all kind of getting that same source of wisdom without even really
mhm.
having to work too hard for it.
Yeah.
Okay, I got one more question for you. So for my group, we're a group of 6. We don't know exactly what we're wanting to do yet. It's very open. We don't know how, intentional or sharing or co-housing or any of that stuff. It's kind of all still up in the air.
Yeah.
But what would you say as like a big piece of advice for us at this stage to try to focus on before we get into too much of the weeds?
Well, it's probably really good to have a couple of like retreats, all 6
Mm,
of you, just to spend a day to just really throw out all kinds of crazy vision ideas, to talk about what you're dreaming, to talk about what you're worried about, what scares you about doing this, to talk about money, where would it come from? Takes a shitload of it. To just really like start to think about like the Potluck Farm. I mentioned that we bought the land in 1990. Nobody moved on it till like for like 5 or 6 years. But we first thought, oh, we're going to do 10-acre lots. And then we kept talking and dreaming, and oh, okay, well, then we're not protecting a lot of that land, and it's going
mm,
to be too expensive to build the road and have the underground power. Well, why don't we do 3-acre lots? And then we were like, somebody said, no, that's not enough. Let's do 5-acre lots. I mean, this went on over a couple years. And then we were like, oh my God, this book came out about co-housing. Let's do co-housing. We'll put all of the homes near the front of the property, be less expensive, and then we'll have like 120 acres for farming and pastures and barns and all
yeah.
that. And then there were people who were like, no way. I want my own property. I want my own barn.
Yeah.
And so then we went back to 5-acre lots, and we ended up at 3-acre lots. And it took a year and a half probably.
Wow.
So over there are 14 3-acre lots, not quite, a couple of them are subdivided, but um, and then there's still 130 acres of like trail, and we have a huge trail system, trails, and we put it into conservation easement and streams, and it's beautiful. So it was this like, but it took a lot of time, just talking together, dreaming about things. Like you got to have time together to really spend, and we did like at least once a month. We all were together doing something on the land, or some kind of dreaming, or some kind of planning, or some kind of scenario stuff, or we were just spending a lot of time together. Or like you're learning, you're probably all making these phone calls, whatever you're doing, come together and here's what we've learned and what do we like and what do we don't like. And on a scale of 1 to 10, how serious are you about this? And I mean, there's 100 questions you guys could ask, but
Mm.
you just need to have time together to talk and really find out what you really like. What are the maybe 2 or 3 things that you really all are bonded around? Like these are the things that would be the core of our vision. If you don't have that, you're probably not going very far. And once you do, it's like, well, what are the things that I'm really worried about? That I'm going to lose my independence. I don't like the idea of consensus. I mean, you don't have to use it. I mean, you just like, there's just so many. I think I would keep it big picture vision,
Mm.
you know, um, because until you can agree on that and really get bonded around what's the vision, you will go off in different directions when you start to do anything more.
Got it. Yeah, that's great. Great advice.
And I suggest you get a really great outside facilitator to do that for you, at least
Uh,
a couple times.
outside facilitator, like someone who's not part of the group, you mean?
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Somebody who really knows how to facilitate a strategy meeting.
Oh. Yeah, is that something that you think we would pay someone for, or just?
Yeah, unless you know somebody
Yeah.
who does that sort of thing. It's worth the money.
Yeah.
It is totally worth the money to get facilitation. It's totally worth the money to get training.
Hmm.
People don't budget for those. You got to do that. You
Hmm.
got to do that.
All right. Thank you guys for tuning into this conversation. If you liked what you're seeing, feel free to like and subscribe. And let me know in the comments what you liked, what you didn't like, what you want to hear more of, questions I should be asking. And I'll get to that in future conversations because I'm doing a lot of these interviews. And yeah, if you want to know more about Mary's community, you can find it in the description. And I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.